Attraction is often thought of in simple terms: chemistry, physical appearance, shared interests. It's easy to believe that when we feel drawn to someone, it's just the natural ebb and flow of human connection. But this understanding barely scratches the surface. Beneath our conscious desires lies a hidden realm of psychological forces, unresolved traumas, early life experiences, and subconscious patterns that dictate the people we are attracted to and the relationships we create. These forces can shape our perception of what feels normal or safe in relationships, even if those dynamics are harmful or destructive. To truly understand why we attract the wrong people, we must first explore how our early childhood experiences mold our attraction patterns. Attachment theory, pioneered by psychologist John Bowlby, offers a profound insight into how these early experiences with caregivers shape our emotional world. Bowlby's theory posits that the bonds we form with our primary caregivers during infancy influence how we perceive relationships for the rest of our lives. If these bonds are secure, characterized by warmth, responsiveness, and stability, we grow up believing that love and trust are foundational to healthy relationships. But if the bonds are insecure, marked by neglect, emotional inconsistency, or even abuse, we develop a skewed understanding of what love should feel like. Consider, for example, a child who grows up with a mother who is emotionally distant, perhaps due to her own unresolved issues. As a result, the child learns to navigate the world with a sense of emotional insecurity, constantly seeking approval and affection, but never fully receiving it. In adulthood, this person may unknowingly seek out partners who mimic the same emotional coldness and inconsistency they experienced as a child. The lack of affection may feel oddly familiar, even comforting, because it aligns with their early attachment experience. Despite the pain it brings, the dynamic is something they've learned to tolerate, even crave, because it's the only form of love they know. This idea of repetition compulsion, a concept introduced by Sigmund Freud, deepens our understanding of how we recreate past trauma in our relationships. Freud proposed that individuals are unconsciously driven to repeat unresolved emotional wounds, hoping that they might finally be healed. Think of it like trying to rewrite a past mistake. Except in the realm of relationships, we're often doomed to repeat the same patterns because we haven't yet confronted the root of our pain. The hope is that this time, the outcome will be different. The outcome is never different, but the subconscious drive to recreate the trauma continues, pulling us into relationships that mirror the hurt we've never fully processed. For instance, someone who experienced emotional neglect as a child might be unconsciously drawn to a partner who is emotionally unavailable or dismissive. Even though this relationship mirrors past wounds, the person feels a magnetic pull toward it, unable to resist the allure of someone who reminds them of a parent they once sought affection from, but never received it. The pattern becomes deeply ingrained, often without conscious awareness. Over time, the person may come to believe that love always involves emotional struggle, or that they must constantly chase affection, unable to realize that they are recreating the very wounds they desperately need to heal. But attachment theory and repetition compulsion are not the only psychological forces at work. Our emotional patterns, often built upon a fragile sense of self-worth, also play a major role in the kinds of people we attract. Research in psychology shows that individuals with low self-esteem are more likely to attract toxic partners because they may feel unworthy of love or validation. They may believe that they have to earn love, or that love must be something that is fought for. This belief leads them to tolerate mistreatment or emotional abuse. Convinced that this is the price of love, it becomes a toxic dance of validation seeking, where their worth is constantly put on the line in an effort to receive approval. Take, for instance, someone who grew up in an environment where their value was contingent on their performance, be it academic, professional, or social. If they were only praised when they excelled, or if love was withheld during their moments of imperfection, they may grow up internalizing the belief that they are only worthy of love when they meet certain conditions. In adulthood, this person may attract partners who either intentionally or unintentionally reinforce this narrative. Perhaps they date someone who is manipulative or critical, withholding love and affection until the person meets their standards. Despite the hurt, the individual remains in the relationship, constantly striving to earn affection. Because this pattern mirrors what they've been taught, love is conditional. On the flip side, people with higher self-esteem may seek out partners who respect their boundaries, who value them for who they truly are, and who are willing to offer unconditional love. But even these individuals may face challenges, especially if they have unresolved issues of their own. The point here is not that people with low self-worth are doomed to attract toxicity, but that their emotional framework, shaped by their early experiences, creates a filter through which they view and interpret their relationships. If that filter is clouded by insecurity or a sense of unworthiness, it becomes much harder to recognize and reject harmful dynamics when they rise. It's also important to consider how emotional patterns, driven by both personal and societal expectations, shape what we find desirable in others. Society, through its various institutions, has long propagated certain narratives about what relationships should look like. These narratives often center around idealized images of romantic love, power dynamics, and the roles that people should play in relationships. From an early age, we are taught that love should be intense, passionate, and all-consuming. Movies, songs, and literature glorify turbulent relationships, the kind that are marked by extreme highs and lows, where the line between love and hate is often blurred. We are told that the best relationships are the ones that require sacrifice, that demand our undivided attention, and that force us to constantly prove our worth. This societal conditioning works in tandem with our subconscious drives, making us more susceptible to the kinds of relationships that are chaotic, manipulative, or emotionally draining. We are drawn to what we've been taught to expect: the hot and cold interactions, the drama, the pursuit of someone who doesn't return our affections fully. This is the narrative of love that we've internalized, a love that is elusive, difficult, and yet somehow worth the fight. And so, we unconsciously attract the very people who fit this mold, even though this mold is ultimately harmful to our emotional well-being. Ultimately, our psychological patterns, shaped by childhood experiences, our self-esteem, and societal conditioning, determine the kinds of relationships we create. We attract people who reflect the dynamics we've internalized, often without realizing it. The person who grows up in a dysfunctional household may attract dysfunction in adulthood. The person who feels unworthy of love may end up with a partner who mirrors that sense of unworthiness. And the person who has been conditioned by media to view love as a battlefield may continuously attract toxic drama. Recognizing these subconscious forces is the first step toward breaking the cycle. But awareness alone isn't enough. It requires deep self-reflection, a willingness to confront painful truths, and a commitment to rewriting the emotional scripts we've been handed. It's not easy, but it is the only way to truly heal from the past and begin attracting the relationships we deserve. In a world dominated by screens, the media has become a powerful force in shaping our desires, especially when it comes to relationships. From blockbuster films to the endless scroll of social media, we are constantly exposed to carefully curated narratives about love, companionship, and power dynamics. But how often do we stop to question the underlying messages in the media we consume? Are we truly in control of our desires, or have we been conditioned to gravitate towards certain types of relationships because they've been presented to us as ideal? Let's take a moment to reflect on the most iconic portrayals of love and attraction in pop culture. Think about the classic romantic movies we've grown up watching. Films like The Notebook, Titanic, and Romeo and Juliet are often celebrated for their passionate depictions of love. These stories often center around relationships marked by dramatic ups and downs, where love is intense, chaotic, and full of emotional extremes. The protagonists, despite facing numerous obstacles, ultimately end up together, their love immortalized as the ultimate ideal. But beneath this surface-level romance lies a troubling pattern. These relationships are often defined by unhealthy dynamics. In The Notebook, for instance, we have a love story built on emotional manipulation. Noah, the protagonist, spends years trying to win back Allie, a woman who has moved on. Even though she is engaged to someone else, he persuades her, not through mutual respect or understanding, but through persistence and emotional intensity. The idea that true love requires relentless pursuit and sacrifice is glorified, despite the fact that this narrative, in real life, could easily be seen as stalking or emotional manipulation. In Titanic, the relationship between Jack and Rose is thrilling and life-affirming, but it also portrays an ideal of love that is tumultuous and impulsive, where life-or-death stakes turn a fleeting romance into a symbol of true love. Yet, both of these examples ignore the consequences of this kind of love: the manipulation, the obsessive pursuit, and the lack of stable emotional boundaries. It's not just the plot lines that shape our understanding of love, but the characters themselves. The archetypes of the bad boy and the passive girl have been romanticized across decades of media. In movies, the rebellious, dangerous man often attracts the innocent, reserved woman who has yet to experience true passion. This dynamic suggests that love is something that must be fought for, something that requires pain and struggle. We are shown time and time again that true love isn't easy. It's not about mutual respect or healthy communication. It's about emotional intensity, dramatic confessions, and fighting against the odds. These archetypes seep into our subconscious over time. They shape our expectations of what love should look like. We internalize the belief that love is passionate because it's unpredictable, that love is real because it's difficult, and that to truly experience love, we must sacrifice ourselves or endure hardship. But these portrayals don't offer a healthy model of relationships. Instead, they present an ideal that is inherently toxic, one where love is all-consuming, volatile, and marked by instability. Social media, with its endless stream of curated images, plays a similar role in distorting our understanding of love. We are bombarded with perfect snapshots of relationships, highlighting only the highlights, the vacations, the romantic dinners, the Instagram-worthy moments. But rarely do we see the other side of the story: the emotional labor, the disagreements, the insecurities, and the conflicts that are a natural part of any genuine relationship. The culture of oversharing often elevates the superficial aspects of a relationship, while minimizing or even erasing the complexities that define healthy, lasting bonds. In this world of curated perfection, it's easy to get trapped in the comparison game. We look at the happy couples on our feeds, their relationships seemingly flawless, and begin to feel dissatisfied with our own lives. We start questioning why we can't have the same idealized version of love, forgetting that we are only seeing a small part of the picture, the part that has been carefully selected and filtered. This leads to a distorted sense of what a healthy, fulfilling relationship should be. In reality, love is about mutual respect, communication, compromise, and emotional support. But when our desires are shaped by filtered images and unrealistic portrayals, we begin to chase after something that doesn't exist, or worse, we begin to think that what we have isn't enough. This distortion isn't just about what we see in movies or on social media. It's also reflected in the way society as a whole defines what a successful relationship looks like. From early childhood, we are taught to idolize the idea of finding the one, a soulmate, someone who will fulfill all our needs and desires. We are told that love is about finding that perfect person, that magical connection that will make everything else fall into place. This narrative ignores the hard work and self-awareness that must come from within to truly build a healthy partnership. Instead, we are conditioned to believe that relationships are about destiny, that if we find the right person, everything else will be easy. And so, we chase the ideal. We search for someone who matches the image we've been taught to want, often overlooking the warning signs, the red flags, and the emotional needs that are never truly addressed. We're taught to overlook compatibility in favor of chemistry, to seek out thrill instead of stability, and to value passion over trust. The result, we end up in relationships that are volatile, unhealthy, or even emotionally abusive, because we've internalized an unrealistic model of what love is supposed to be. This cultural conditioning is especially powerful because it's often subtle. We're not explicitly told that we should want dysfunction, But the media constantly reinforces the idea that real love is something that comes with struggle, sacrifice, and emotional intensity. This narrative becomes so ingrained that we don't even question it. We see ourselves in these characters. Even though the relationships they portray are far from healthy, we mimic what we've been shown, recreating patterns of behavior that are deeply damaging, all because they've been normalized by society. In a sense, the media doesn't just shape our expectations of others, it shapes our expectations of ourselves. It teaches us to chase after love that is difficult, that is always on the edge of collapse, and that is fueled by emotional drama. But real love, the kind that nurtures us, helps us grow, and provides emotional safety, isn't found in the chaos. It's found in stability, respect, and care. But in a world where pop culture constantly glorifies dysfunction, it's no wonder that we continue to attract the wrong people and end up entangled in relationships that are ultimately unsatisfying and harmful. So, ask yourself, how much of your relationship history has been influenced by what you've seen on screen? How many of your choices were shaped by ideals that were never truly your own? By critically examining the media's influence on our desires, we can begin to disentangle ourselves from the unhealthy patterns it has fostered and make room for more authentic, fulfilling connections. But first, we must confront the stories we've been told and ask, are these the stories we want to live by? Self-worth is one of the most powerful forces shaping our lives. It influences how we perceive ourselves, how we interact with the world, and perhaps most significantly, how we navigate our relationships. While many people believe that the key to attracting a healthy partner lies in finding the right person, the truth is that the relationships we attract are often a direct reflection of our internal sense of self-worth. Simply put, we draw into our lives people who reflect the value we place on ourselves. The concept of self-worth has been explored extensively in psychology, and Carl Rogers, one of the pioneers of humanistic psychology, offers valuable insight into how our self-concept influences our behavior. Rogers proposed that our self-worth is rooted in the love and acceptance we receive, particularly during childhood. When we grow up in an environment where we are unconditionally accepted and valued, we develop a healthy sense of self-worth. But when we are neglected, criticized, or made to feel inadequate, we internalize those feelings, often believing that we are unworthy of love or respect. This fractured self-image doesn't simply stay dormant. It drives our relationships throughout adulthood, often in unconscious ways. For those with low self-worth, love becomes something to be earned rather than something inherent. They may feel unworthy of healthy, unconditional love and, as a result, tend to attract partners who reinforce this belief. It is not uncommon for individuals with low self-esteem to find themselves in relationships with narcissistic or manipulative partners. These toxic dynamics unfold because the person with low self-worth believes that they must earn love by pleasing, sacrificing, or fixing their partner. In their minds, love is something that needs to be fought for, something that must come at a cost, and so they may attract a partner who is emotionally distant or even emotionally abusive, someone who sees them as an object to be used rather than an equal to be cherished. The classic example of this can be seen in relationships with narcissists. Narcissistic individuals often target those who are empathetic and self-sacrificing, as they can easily exploit their need for validation. The person with low self-esteem may be drawn to the narcissist because of the initial charm and attention they receive, but they soon find themselves in a toxic cycle of manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional neglect. The narcissist's inflated sense of self-worth stands in stark contrast to the person with low self-esteem, creating a dynamic where the latter constantly seeks validation, while the former takes advantage of their emotional vulnerabilities. In these relationships, the person with low self-worth feels as though they are lucky to be with someone who is so seemingly superior or desirable, further reinforcing their belief that they are unworthy of anything better. But the problem doesn't always end with narcissists. People with low self-esteem are often drawn to individuals who exhibit signs of emotional unavailability, indifference, or even cruelty. They may mistake these behaviors for passion or excitement, believing that love must involve an emotional roller coaster. This idea is reinforced by the media's portrayal of intense relationships, where the emotional highs and lows are equated with romantic depth. In these instances, the person with low self-worth may feel that if they can just fix their partner, or if they can endure enough emotional pain, they will finally earn the love and affection they crave. But the truth is, this dynamic is not love, it's a cycle of self-abandonment and emotional harm. So, how do we break free from these destructive patterns? One of the most important steps is learning to set healthy boundaries. Boundaries are the invisible lines we draw around ourselves to protect our emotional well-being. They are the rules we establish for how we expect to be treated by others. For people with low self-worth, setting boundaries can feel almost impossible. If you believe you are unworthy of love or respect, you may allow others to overstep your limits without even realizing it. You may tolerate poor treatment, emotional neglect, or manipulation because, on some level, you believe that this is all you deserve. This often leads to a cycle of self-sacrifice, where your own needs are constantly overlooked in favor of your partner's, and you feel as though you are constantly giving and never receiving in return. But when you begin to recognize your inherent worth, the process of setting boundaries becomes empowering. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about teaching people how to treat you. When you know your value, you are able to identify what is acceptable and what is not in a relationship. You no longer tolerate disrespect or emotional abuse, and you start to demand the love and care you deserve. Setting boundaries is an act of self-respect, and it is essential for breaking free from toxic patterns and attracting healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Self-love is another crucial element in this process. Self-love is not about narcissism or vanity. It's about recognizing your intrinsic worth as a human being, independent of anyone else's opinion or approval. When you love yourself, you stop seeking validation from others because you already recognize that you are valuable. This is not an overnight transformation. It's a practice of nurturing your emotional health and learning to honor your own needs. Self-love is about cultivating a relationship with yourself that is kind, compassionate, and respectful. As you begin to build a stronger sense of self-worth and set healthier boundaries, you will start to notice a shift in the types of people you attract. No longer will you be drawn to toxic individuals who mirror your own feelings of inadequacy. Instead, you will find yourself attracting people who respect your boundaries, who value you for who you are, and who offer the love and care that you've always deserved. The key is not about waiting for the right person to come along. It's about becoming the right person by first recognizing your own worth and making decisions that honor your emotional health. The journey to healing your self-worth is often difficult and requires deep self-reflection, but the reward is immense. The ability to build relationships that are grounded in mutual respect, love, and healthy interdependence. When you truly understand your value, you stop chasing relationships that are toxic or emotionally draining. Instead, you create a life filled with relationships that uplift you, nurture you, and help you grow. Ultimately, your sense of self-worth shapes everything about the relationships you attract. It determines whether you tolerate mistreatment, whether you set healthy boundaries, and whether you feel worthy of love. The more you work on healing your self-worth, the more you will find that the people you attract begin to reflect the love and respect you've learned to give yourself. And when that happens, you'll realize that you no longer need to search for love in the wrong places, because you've already found it within yourself. It's a familiar story. You've been hurt before. You've felt the sting of betrayal, the pain of rejection, the suffocating weight of emotional neglect. You swore to yourself that you would never go down that road again. You promised you would recognize the red flags next time and that you would choose better. But somehow, despite all the lessons learned, you find yourself back in the same situation, with someone who mirrors the same toxic dynamics of past relationships. You may wonder, why do I keep choosing the wrong people? Why do I keep returning to unhealthy relationships, despite the emotional toll they take? What is it that draws us back to the very things that hurt us? The answer lies in a psychological phenomenon known as repetition compulsion, a concept first introduced by Sigmund Freud. Repetition compulsion is the unconscious drive to repeat past emotional experiences, often those that are painful, even when we consciously want to avoid them. Essentially, we are drawn to reenact unresolved emotional wounds from the past, as though trying to fix or master them. It's as if we are seeking closure from a chapter that never truly ended, a chapter written in the language of pain and unmet needs. The roots of repetition compulsion can be traced back to our earliest relationships, particularly with our primary caregivers. As children, we are highly impressionable, and our interactions with our caregivers shape our understanding of love, trust, and emotional safety. If we grew up in an environment marked by neglect, emotional unavailability, or abuse, we learn to adapt to these dynamics in order to survive. Over time, these early experiences form the foundation of our attachment style, a blueprint for how we perceive relationships throughout our lives. For example, if you grew up with a caregiver who was emotionally distant or unavailable, you may have developed an anxious attachment style, where you constantly seek validation and reassurance in relationships, even at the cost of your own emotional well-being. You may be drawn to partners who are similarly emotionally unavailable, unconsciously seeking to recreate the dynamic you experienced as a child. Despite the pain and frustration these relationships bring, there is something familiar about them, something that feels like home, even if that home was a place of emotional abandonment. Alternatively, if you grew up in a chaotic or abusive household, you may have learned to tolerate dysfunction as a norm. In these cases, individuals often find themselves attracted to partners who exhibit similar behaviors, be it emotional volatility, controlling tendencies, or verbal abuse. They may believe that love must involve conflict or that they deserve to be treated poorly because that was their reality growing up. In these scenarios, the cycle of repetition is not about desire, but about familiarity. The subconscious mind seeks what it knows, even if it's destructive. This psychological pattern creates a paradox. While consciously, we may want love, peace, and stability, subconsciously, we are drawn to the very situations that will cause us pain. It's as if we are trying to rewrite our past, to finally get the love, validation, or attention we lacked in childhood. But rather than resolving our old wounds, we end up perpetuating them. Time and time again, this cycle becomes even more difficult to break due to the psychological phenomenon known as cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance occurs when there is a discrepancy between our beliefs and our actions, which causes psychological discomfort. In the context of relationships, cognitive dissonance manifests when we hold the belief that we deserve healthy love and happiness, yet we continue to choose partners who do not treat us well. To resolve this discomfort, our minds create justifications or rationalizations for staying in the relationship. We tell ourselves things like, "They'll change," "Maybe I'm just overreacting," or "It's not as bad as it seems." These justifications help us maintain a sense of emotional equilibrium, allowing us to continue in a relationship that we know deep down is not serving us. Cognitive dissonance is a powerful force, one that enables us to deceive ourselves into believing that our unhealthy relationships will eventually improve or that we can fix our partners. This is particularly true for those with low self-worth, who may feel that their value depends on their ability to save someone or make them happy. The emotional investment we pour into a relationship often blinds us to the reality of the situation, and we convince ourselves that the love we seek is just one more effort away. In addition to repetition compulsion and cognitive dissonance, societal pressure plays a significant role in perpetuating these unhealthy patterns. From a young age, we are bombarded with societal messages about love and relationships. We are taught that relationships are worth fighting for, that enduring hardship is a sign of true commitment, and that love requires sacrifice. These ideals can be deeply ingrained in our culture, influencing how we view and value relationships. The notion of never giving up on love is often romanticized. Despite the toll it can take on our emotional well-being, society's emphasis on the importance of staying in relationships, no matter how toxic, can make us feel guilty or ashamed for wanting to leave, even when it's the healthiest option. The emotional cost of leaving a toxic relationship is often underestimated. It's not just the heartbreak of parting ways with someone you may still care for, but the fear of the unknown, the shame of admitting failure, and the societal judgment of walking away from something that others may perceive as worth saving. The pressure to stay in relationships, even when they are clearly harmful, can trap individuals in a cycle of self-sacrifice and emotional suppression. The fear of being alone, the fear of societal judgment, and the fear of not being good enough all conspire to keep people tethered to relationships that are ultimately detrimental. This pressure can make it feel almost impossible to break free, even when the cost of staying is overwhelming. The fear of loneliness or the need to prove something to others can prevent individuals from recognizing the damage being done to their emotional health. But in these moments of doubt, it is important to recognize that choosing yourself is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of self-preservation. The first step toward breaking the cycle of repetition is acknowledging the unhealthy patterns and recognizing that you are worthy of something better. To break free from these patterns, it's essential to start with self-awareness. You must identify the emotional wounds that are driving your choices, understand the subconscious pull of familiarity, and confront the cognitive dissonance that keeps you tethered to toxic relationships. It may take time, and it may involve difficult emotional work, but healing from repetition compulsion is possible. One way to begin breaking the cycle is through therapy, particularly trauma-informed therapy, which can help uncover the unresolved emotional wounds that are influencing your choices. Learning to set healthy boundaries, practicing self-love, and reframing your beliefs about love and relationships are also vital steps in creating a healthier relational dynamic. Most importantly, you must cultivate the courage to walk away from relationships that do not honor your worth, even when it feels difficult or painful. The cycle of repetition is not something that can be broken overnight, but it is not an insurmountable task. By understanding the psychological mechanisms at play and taking active steps toward healing, you can start to rewrite the narrative of your relationships, one that is grounded in love, respect, and healthy boundaries. It begins with a commitment to yourself to no longer settle for toxic dynamics and to embrace the possibility of a healthier, more fulfilling future. Toxic relationships leave scars that often go unnoticed at first, subtle bruises to the psyche that accumulate over time. The emotional and psychological toll of repeatedly attracting the wrong people isn't just about the pain of the present moment. It's about the lingering effects that extend long after the relationship ends. The scars may not always be visible to others, but they profoundly shape our perceptions of ourselves, our worth, and our future. We may begin to question our value, our ability to trust others, or our belief that healthy love is even possible. When we repeatedly find ourselves in toxic relationships, the damage is often far more insidious than we initially recognize. The emotional cost is not only about the heartbreak or the immediate sense of betrayal. It's about the lasting effect it has on our mental health, our self-esteem, and our worldview. These relationships erode our sense of self-worth and leave us emotionally exhausted, disconnected, and uncertain of how to move forward. We become prisoners of our past, stuck in patterns that drain our energy and prevent us from cultivating the love and connection we deserve. One of the key psychological mechanisms that contribute to this toll is emotional contagion, the phenomenon by which emotions are transferred from one person to another. In relationships, especially toxic ones, emotions like anger, anxiety, fear, and sadness can be contagious. If we are constantly exposed to negativity, criticism, or emotional manipulation, those emotions begin to seep into our own emotional landscape. In essence, we absorb the negative energy of our partners, and their emotional states begin to dominate our own. This can have devastating effects on mental health. Emotional contagion doesn't simply make us feel bad in the moment, it rewires the way we think and feel on a deeper, more lasting level. When we're repeatedly subjected to emotional abuse, gaslighting, or neglect, we begin to internalize those negative emotions. We may start to feel anxious and uncertain about ourselves, doubting our worth or questioning whether we deserve better treatment. Over time, this emotional contamination leads to diminished self-esteem, depression, and an overall sense of emotional depletion. The psychological toll of toxic relationships also manifests in the form of burnout, a state of emotional exhaustion that occurs when our emotional resources are drained. In relationships that are consistently draining, we invest so much energy into trying to please or fix the other person that we lose touch with our own needs. We give and give, often without receiving anything in return, and over time, we become emotionally depleted. Our ability to feel joy, excitement, or hope is stifled, and we are left feeling exhausted and disconnected. This emotional burnout not only affects our mental well-being, but also disrupts our ability to form healthy, meaningful connections with others. Take, for example, the case of someone who finds themselves repeatedly drawn to emotionally unavailable partners. At first, the relationship feels thrilling or promising, the sense of being chosen by someone who seems distant or mysterious. But over time, the reality of emotional neglect sets in. The person pours their energy into trying to break through the walls of emotional detachment, but no matter how hard they try, they're met with indifference or withdrawal. The more they give, the less they receive, and slowly, the emotional toll begins to mount. Over time, they become emotionally exhausted, worn down by the constant effort of trying to make something work that was never going to work. The more they invest in these relationships, the more they feel disconnected from themselves, as if they are slowly losing their sense of identity in the process. The cycle of emotional burnout can have a ripple effect on every aspect of life. When someone is caught in a toxic relationship, they often feel isolated, as if they are carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. Their relationships with friends and family may suffer because they have little emotional energy left to invest in those connections. They may begin to retreat into themselves, closing off the possibility of meaningful connections with others because they've been so deeply hurt in the past. In this way, the emotional toll of attracting the wrong people doesn't just impact the immediate relationship. It affects the individual's broader capacity for intimacy and connection. Moreover, toxic relationships warp our sense of self-worth in profound ways. When we allow ourselves to be treated poorly, it sends a message to our subconscious that we are unworthy of love and respect. Over time, this internalized message begins to define how we see ourselves. If we consistently find ourselves in situations where we're not valued or where our emotional needs are ignored, we may start to believe that we are not deserving of healthy love or affection. This belief can become deeply ingrained, making it even harder to break free from unhealthy patterns in the future. Psychologists refer to this as a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we believe that we are unworthy of love or that we are destined to be in unhealthy relationships, we unconsciously seek out relationships that confirm this belief. This creates a vicious cycle where the more we attract toxic people, the more our self-esteem erodes, and the more we believe that we are incapable of having healthy relationships. The emotional toll in this case isn't just about the present pain, it's about how we begin to internalize the idea that we don't deserve better. Breaking free from this cycle requires more than just leaving the toxic relationship behind. It requires rebuilding one's sense of self-worth, learning to set boundaries, and unlearning the patterns of self-sacrifice and emotional dependency that have defined past relationships. Rebuilding self-esteem after repeated emotional depletion can be an incredibly challenging journey, but it's necessary if one hopes to attract healthier, more fulfilling relationships in the future. Part of this healing process involves addressing the emotional scars left by past relationships. This might involve therapy, where individuals can explore the emotional wounds that have been inflicted on them and learn healthier ways to cope with emotional pain. It may also involve reconnecting with oneself, taking time to nurture one's own emotional health, rediscovering one's passions, and learning to love and care for oneself in ways that were previously neglected. The emotional and psychological toll of attracting the wrong people is immense, but it's not permanent. With time, effort, and the right support, individuals can heal from the damage caused by toxic relationships. They can rebuild their sense of self-worth, break free from the cycle of emotional depletion, and learn to attract relationships that are supportive, nurturing, and reciprocal. The key is recognizing the cost of staying stuck in unhealthy dynamics and choosing, instead, to invest in one's own healing. By doing so, it becomes possible to create a future filled with healthier, more balanced connections, relationships that uplift rather than drain the soul. It's easy to feel trapped in the patterns of your past, as if the weight of every toxic relationship you've ever had will inevitably shape the future ones you'll attract. But what if breaking free from this cycle is possible? What if, with some conscious effort, you could start to attract the healthy, fulfilling relationships you've always wanted? The good news is that transformation isn't only possible, it's within reach. It begins with a deep commitment to yourself, to your emotional growth, and to the work of breaking old patterns. The first step in breaking free from the cycle of attracting the wrong people is self-awareness. If you find yourself repeatedly drawn to individuals who are toxic, abusive, or manipulative, the first and most powerful step is to look inward. Understanding the unconscious forces driving your choices is essential in transforming your relational patterns. Why do you keep choosing the same type of person? What emotional needs are you trying to fulfill by staying in these relationships? What unresolved traumas from your past are guiding your decisions? To gain clarity, it's helpful to take stock of your past relationships and reflect on the common themes. Are you attracted to people who disregard your needs or make you feel unworthy? Do you find yourself overextending, sacrificing your own happiness in the hopes of receiving validation from someone else? These questions aren't easy to answer, but they are critical to understanding why you keep ending up in unhealthy situations. Once you begin to understand the psychological patterns that influence your choices, the next step is to start healing from past trauma. For many people, toxic relationships are not isolated incidents, but rather the culmination of unresolved emotional wounds. These wounds often go back to childhood, a time when you learned how to relate to others, how to feel valued, and how to expect love. If you grew up in an environment where love was conditional or emotionally unavailable, you may have learned to associate love with pain, neglect, or conflict. These early experiences often become the blueprint for future relationships. Even when you consciously want something healthier, healing from these wounds requires addressing them directly. Therapy can be an invaluable tool in this process, helping you uncover the emotional scars that have been hidden beneath the surface for years. Trauma-informed therapy, in particular, can guide you through the process of healing from the past, teaching you how to rewrite your internal narrative and build healthier emotional patterns. The more you heal from past wounds, the more you can release the emotional baggage that has been driving your relationship choices. But healing isn't just about understanding the past. It's also about developing a healthy sense of self-worth. One of the most important components of attracting healthier relationships is learning to recognize your own value. If you've been in toxic relationships, chances are your self-esteem has taken a hit. You may have internalized the belief that you don't deserve love or that love must come with hardship and sacrifice. The reality, however, is that you do deserve a healthy relationship, one that is based on mutual respect, love, and support. The process of rebuilding self-worth involves several key elements, beginning with self-compassion. You must be kind to yourself as you unlearn the patterns that have held you back. Recognize that you are deserving of love simply because you exist, not because you are trying to fix someone or because you are making endless sacrifices. Self-compassion also means forgiving yourself for the mistakes you may have made in the past. It's important to understand that you were acting from a place of emotional need and that it's okay to make mistakes as you learn and grow. Another vital element of rebuilding self-worth is emotional independence. This means learning to rely on yourself for emotional validation rather than seeking it from others. When we place our emotional well-being in the hands of someone else, we create an imbalance in the relationship, often leading to dependency and dysfunction. Developing emotional independence doesn't mean rejecting love or intimacy, but rather ensuring that your happiness isn't contingent upon the actions of others. You can still enjoy healthy, fulfilling relationships, but your sense of worth should come from within, not from how others treat you. An essential part of emotional independence is learning to set boundaries. Healthy boundaries are the foundation of any strong relationship. When we have clear boundaries, we teach others how to treat us. We communicate our needs and protect our emotional health by not allowing others to overstep. Setting boundaries can be difficult, especially for those who have been conditioned to tolerate emotional neglect or manipulation. But it's absolutely crucial for protecting your sense of self and ensuring that you attract relationships based on mutual respect. One of the most powerful tools in breaking the cycle of attracting the wrong people is radical self-love. This concept goes beyond traditional self-care. It's about deeply accepting yourself as you are, flaws and all, and making a commitment to your own well-being. Radical self-love means honoring your needs, setting boundaries, and never settling for less than what you deserve. It means choosing yourself first and recognizing that you are worthy of love that is healthy, respectful, and nurturing. When you cultivate radical self-love, you begin to raise your standards for what a relationship should look like. You no longer settle for relationships that drain you, hurt you, or leave you feeling unimportant. Instead, you begin to attract people who reflect the work you've done on yourself. Healthy, supportive relationships become a natural byproduct of your personal growth. As you raise your own standards, you will begin to attract people who share those standards. People who value and respect you in the same way that you now value and respect yourself. The idea of attracting the right person isn't just about finding someone who treats you well. It's about creating a relationship that is rooted in mutual growth, respect, and understanding. People who have done the work of healing and self-discovery are more likely to recognize and embrace these same qualities in others. This means you are more likely to attract someone who can love you for who you truly are, without the need for manipulation or compromise. But how do you start recognizing red flags early on? Part of breaking the cycle of attracting the wrong people is developing a deep awareness of what you will and will not tolerate. You've likely ignored red flags in the past, rationalizing away behaviors that made you uncomfortable or hurt. But once you start the work of healing and self-love, you will begin to notice those red flags earlier. You will start to trust your intuition and recognize when a person is not aligned with your values or emotional needs. The ability to identify red flags early on will help you avoid getting caught in toxic relationships. In the future, the journey toward healthier relationships is not a quick fix. It's a long, challenging process that requires self-reflection, emotional work, and a commitment to healing. But the rewards, deeper connections, healthier boundaries, and more fulfilling relationships are more than worth the effort. By embracing the steps towards self-discovery and emotional independence, you can break the cycle of attracting the wrong people and begin attracting relationships that support and nurture your growth. The journey we've just taken is not merely about understanding why we attract the wrong people. It's about realizing that the power to change is always within us. We've explored the deep psychological forces that influence our attraction to unhealthy relationships, the subconscious desires, the societal conditioning, and the emotional wounds that shape our choices. We've uncovered the hidden costs of these toxic dynamics, the emotional exhaustion, the damage to self-esteem, and the long-lasting scars. But now, we reach the pivotal moment of empowerment, the understanding that we hold the pen when it comes to rewriting our relationship story. Every pattern we've explored is not set in stone. Every habit, every choice, every attraction to the wrong person, they are not fixed outcomes. They are reflections of where we are in our journey, shaped by our past experiences, but not determined by them. The key to breaking the cycle and attracting healthier, more fulfilling relationships lies in self-awareness, healing, and a profound sense of self-worth. It's a journey that requires commitment, courage, and a willingness to confront our own emotional truths, but it is a journey that can be walked by anyone willing to do the work. At the core of this transformation is the realization that we are not passive recipients of fate or of love. We are active participants in the stories we create. Yes, we are influenced by our upbringing, by societal expectations, and by past pain. But we are not bound by these forces. We have the ability to rewrite the script. Through emotional healing, self-compassion, and boundary setting, we can begin to attract relationships that are built on mutual respect, understanding, and shared growth. We can stop repeating the same toxic patterns and instead start forming connections that reflect the healthiest parts of ourselves. In this journey, we reclaim agency. We no longer need to settle for relationships that drain us, that make us feel small or unworthy. By cultivating radical self-love and setting higher standards for the people we allow into our lives, we begin to attract what we deserve: love that uplifts us, partners who respect our boundaries, and relationships that honor our true selves. So, as we close this exploration, ask yourself this: what story do you want to tell about your relationships? Will it be a tale of patterns you couldn't escape, or one of transformation and growth? The choice is yours, and the power is in your hands. You have the ability to break free from the cycle and rewrite your relationship narrative. It's time to stop attracting the wrong people and start attracting the love you've always deserved.